So the question is, what was the last 45 days all about? Could it have been potentially the intervening political elections? Could that possibly have been the cynical motivations of the, not right now, I won't.
I was going to ask you a question.
Could it have possibly been the cynical motivations of my colleagues on the other side of the aisle? Just a rhetorical question that I'll leave floating out there to say, what were the reasons? We know why. Because our colleagues on the other side of the aisle have nothing to run on. And our colleagues on the other side of the aisle want something desperately to run on. So they're trying to manufacture a healthcare crisis that they created. That's the actual truth. Ranking member, a couple things. There's been a lot of conversations here about the federal employees. Real quick question for the ranking member. How many employees would depart through attrition, whether it was under Biden or President Trump?
Yeah, well, overall, we've got, that's almost, I think it's now over 220,000 federal employees that were either fired, some took the voluntary buyout, which maybe is what you're talking about with the attrition piece, but over 220,000 federal employees. That started in January. It has nothing to do with a government shutting down and people furloughed, et cetera. These people were gone in a nanosecond here.
So question to Mr. Chairman, what I was getting at here is, for whatever the numbers are, 220,000 or variants, Mr. Chairman, would you agree that a very large number of those go every year by attrition, say over 100,000, that there was in fact this deferred program, right, where they were basically offered the ability to leave, which represents another large chunk, I don't know, 60 or 70,000 or some significant number. And then there are questions then of additional employees, whether it's RIFs and so forth. And in the question of the RIFs from October, which are post-shutdown, post-Democrat caused shutdown, that those RIFs are reinstated under this legislation, correct? To the ones post-shutdown, is that correct?
That's correct.
And all of the prior folks, we're talking about the vast majority are those that are either left through attrition or those who went out under the deferred program. Is that true?
That's correct.
So I think a lot is being made of that, and I think then the question becomes, well, what is the right number of employees, right? I mean, so you've got people who are leaving under attrition, you have people who were then, they took a deferred program, they left, and the administration is trying to act, and then with respect to the RIFs and the decisions they were making in October, is that not the prioritization authority that the administration has during a shutdown to manage what they've got to on a cash flow basis to manage the functions of government?
I think that's correct. Let me add one thing, just an interesting wrinkle on this, and I just speak for my own district. We had people that wanted to take the buyout,
right?
That they literally, the government said, no, we're not going to. You're not going to be able to because you're mission critical. I mean, over 1,000 at Tinker Air Force Base wanted to take the buyout, but they were too important to keeping bombers in the air, tankers in the air, AWACS in the air. And the decision was made locally by the commanding general. No, we can't afford to lose you. I mean, you can leave, obviously. Any Americans can resign their position, but we can't give you a buyout. We really need you here. So, yeah, I mean, these numbers are a lot more complex than simple, which I think is the point you're making, than just stating a number and saying these people are all driven out. That's just not the case.
Well, and importantly, I think if you go from that to then the second area of concern, which we're talking about with respect to just the shutdown generally, true or false, on September 19th, we passed legislation that would have continued funding at current levels through November 20th.
That's true.
And on October 1st, the government entered shutdown because the Senate, by virtue of decisions by Senate Democrats, refused to take up and pass that bill, which undeniably would have continued to fund government at the current level beginning October 1 through November 20th. And instead, we entered a shutdown.
That's correct, although I always think it's important to note 55 senators, majority of the Senate,
correct,
did actually vote to keep the government open.
And so important for the American people to understand that was a choice. And so I think when we talk about a shutdown, the question is why? Why? Why do it? Because here we are, and we've got legislation in front of us that Democrats have now supported in the Senate that return us effectively to the status quo ante, where we're going to have government funded out to another now date certain, now extended into January, because we're now into November, so we had to extend the date. We managed to move 3 appropriations bills through some degree of regular order, 3 bills in the House and the Senate. But by virtue of now passing this bill, we're going to restore where we would have been had we just done our work on October 1. So the question is, what was the last 45 days all about? Could it have been potentially the intervening political elections? Could that possibly have been the cynical motivations of the, not right now, I won't.
I was going to ask you a question.
Could it have possibly been the cynical motivations of my colleagues on the other side of the aisle? Just a rhetorical question that I'll leave floating out there to say, what were the reasons? We know why. Because our colleagues on the other side of the aisle have nothing to run on. And our colleagues on the other side of the aisle want something desperately to run on, so they're trying to manufacture a healthcare crisis that they created. That's the actual truth. And with respect to healthcare, the question that I would ask is this: should we be putting forward legislation that will continue to fund the insurance companies at the level they're currently getting, where 85% of their revenues are coming from the federal government? Because that's what's happening. Or that $35 billion are going to insurance companies last year to go to people that weren't even using their plans. Is that what we should be doing? Is that the healthcare system that my colleagues on the other side of the aisle are saying that must be addressed by virtue of subsidies to insurance companies? Because President Trump had it right last week when he said, well, if you're going to do these subsidies, which is not how we would prefer to do business, then shouldn't it go to the American people to be able to go into a market and go be able to get the doctor of his or her choice, or get direct primary care, or be able to figure out how to take care of their family rather than call an insurance bureaucrat who's pocketing the money through a system that our colleagues designed and broke, and for which not one single Republican ever voted, including the subsidies that no Republican voted for, that were created to be temporary by our colleagues' own voice. They were to be temporary during COVID. And we are now to extend the very subsidies that my colleagues are laying bare, the broken healthcare system that they created. I remember all too well in 2013 being on the floor of the Senate with Ted Cruz when we were raising the questions of what would happen when this system were implemented. Because the debate then was whether we should fund the implementation of a system that would end up bankrupting the average American family, as this system has done. What I'm talking about is the reason. I'm talking about the reason that one would go to the Senate floor and say maybe we shouldn't do the very thing that right now is causing the American people pain.
15 years.
Because we talk about the constituents who are having pain. Yeah. How about my constituent who died last year, who couldn't go to MD Anderson because Obamacare doesn't cover it? Is that coverage? Is that the kind of healthcare system that people deserve? While insurance companies are pocketing extraordinary profits, off the charts
15 years
profits.
and you haven't come up with a plan for health insurance.
And health insurance,
15 years.
Health insurance executives are minting money.
Oh, God.
Minting money on the back of dollars coming from federal taxpayers and the federal government. And then our colleagues on the other side of the aisle have the temerity to come here and complain about the system they broke. That's what we're actually dealing with here.
It's about repeal of the Affordable Care Act. That's what this is all about.
Or the extent to which you've got
With no replacement.
Is it our time? The extent to which we are here because our colleagues know full well that this was a political exercise. To the chairman, we heard about SNAP. True or false, if we pass this legislation, will SNAP benefits proceed immediately?
Correct.
They could proceed.
So if we pass this legislation tomorrow,
Yeah,
SNAP funding will continue immediately.
correct.
While our friends at the other end of Pennsylvania Avenue are trying to manage the funding of government, while our colleagues on the other side of the aisle have shut it down.
They're at
Correct?
the Supreme Court
Right.
trying to end that.
Mr. Chairman, one last question. So our colleague brought up the big, beautiful bill. When we created and set out the big, beautiful bill, and we put into it components to deal with border security and defense, where we had $150 billion for each in that legislation. Was that not beneficial for the executive branch to manage through such a moment as this, where our colleagues have shut down the government and they've now had additional flexibility with respect to dollars? Not all, it's not appropriations, I realize that, but they had additional flexibility to manage through it so that we could continue to secure the border and secure to defend the nation.
I wouldn't presume to speak for the administration, but that would be my opinion, that has given them the ability to make sure that we've been able to pay our troops twice, which would not have happened had they not had that flexibility and the president not made some tough decisions. So, yeah, I point out, I know everybody here is concerned about SNAP and WIC, and the president directed additional resources into those programs to the extent that he could during a government shutdown. So, I mean, the president's done everything he can to mitigate, I think, what our colleagues on the other side of the aisle have done. They haven't been able to do it in the House. I do stress this is a Senate deal. It's been the minority position in both chambers. But I appreciate what the administration's done to try and make sure the people that needed help got it, the people that deserved to get paid did get paid insofar as they could do it. But, yeah, again, they can't do it indefinitely, and they can't do it for everyone.
Mr. Roy?
I think, Chairman, one last point that I want for the record. The Obamacare 2026 premiums, there's a great report that puts out that shows that only 3.3% of those premiums are affected at all by the COVID credits, that 97% of the premiums in 2026 will continue to flow as normal, and I'd like to insert that in the record. Thank you.
Mr.
Yield
Roy,
back.
Thank you, Mr.
Mr.
Roy.
Roy.
Mr. Neguse, you're recognized.